Hi, everyone. My name is Emma, and if you have a minute, I have a story that is a bit of a roller coaster, one that involves love, betrayal, and a struggle for dignity. Before we dive in deep, let me set the scene and introduce you to the actors in this little drama of mine. It all starts with me, Emma, born into what many would call privilege with a silver spoon and other nonsense. But despite a penniless start, I was raised to value hard work over handouts. My dad is the king of the engine additive world, a self-made man who turned a niche into an empire. My mom is no slouch either. She built a beauty salon empire from scratch, making her name synonymous with style. Their divorce, when I was 19, could have been messy, but they kept it classy, splitting everything in half while maintaining their friendship. My dad stayed single, content with his business and bachelor life, and my mom remarried but didn't expand the family any further than me. Into the scene comes Jake, my husband, or as I used to think of him, the catalyst for my personal turmoil. We got married when I was fresh out of college, taking a job teaching music to kids who had more energy than intelligence. Life seemed pretty sweet until we ran into difficulties. I became pregnant, and suddenly Jake's true colors began to show through. One lazy Sunday, stretched out on the couch with his legs pulled up, Jake carelessly tossed a grenade into our lives. "Emma, baby, why don't you just quit your job and stay home with the baby? We can handle it." I almost choked on my tea. "Quit your job, Jake? You know we can't afford it on your salary alone, and I love my job." He waved his hand dismissively, a smirk playing on his lips. "Come on, Em, we're not ordinary people. Your dad's a hotshot. A little help from him, and we're golden." I could feel my blood boiling. "That's not the point, Jake. I'm not going to use my parents' wealth for our daily needs. We agreed to live within our means." But Jake wouldn't accept it. At dinner, in front of his parents, he brought it up again. "Emma's thinking of taking time off work, for the birth of the baby and all that." His mum, Carol, a woman with a sharp tongue and a knack for finding benefits, jumped up from her seat. "Oh, that's wonderful about Emma's family. You two won't have to worry about anything." I gripped my fork tighter, trying to stay calm. "Actually, we haven't decided anything yet, and we're going to manage on our own, thank you." Jake's father, Frank, who never missed a beat, grinned. "Why play complicated games, Emma? A little help from your ancestors and you could live a life of ease. Why pass up such an opportunity?" The conversation spiraled from there, Jake and his parents painting grandiose pictures of a life lived at my parents' expense. Every word felt like betrayal, twisting the knife deeper and deeper. They didn't see me. They saw a ticket to an easy life. That night, lying in bed next to Jake, I couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. "Jake, do you really think we should be relying on my parents like that?" I whispered, hoping for some sign I'd misread the situation. He rolled over, facing me with those eyes that once melted my heart. "Emma, it's not about need. It's about what's smart. Your parents can afford it, and we deserve a break. Why not take it?" Deserve. That word echoed in my head long after Jake had drifted off to sleep. It was clear we were on different paths with different values. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd missed the signs and where we went from here. After that first clash with Jake about money and pride, I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd find our way back to the same page. But oh, was I wrong. Enter the in-laws stage left with their own special brand of chaos. Jake's folks weren't exactly the poster children for self-reliance. They had this way of sniffing out a free meal from miles away, and my family's wealth was like a beacon to them. One evening, we're all sitting around our cramped living room, and Frank's going on about this new business opportunity that just needed a small investment to get off the ground. "So, Emma, darling," Carol starts, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that could give you cavities. "With your family's resources, I bet you could easily help us out. It's such a sure thing." I tried to keep my cool, really, I did. "Carol, Frank, I've told you before, we're managing our finances independently. My parents' money isn't part of this equation, but Frank, oh, he's got the persistence of a door-to-door salesman. Come on, Emma, it's not like you'd feel it. What's a few thousand to your dad? He probably spends that on golf in a weekend." The audacity floored me. Here they were, sitting in our home, eating our food, and they had the guts to treat my family's hard-earned money like it was theirs for the taking. Jake tries to play mediator. Maybe they have a point, Em. It's just a loan, right? We could help out family. I nearly choked on the word. Jake, when did we decide it's our job to bankroll your parents' dreams? The room went ice cold. Carol, not one to let a moment of drama go by unexploited, piped up, "Well, I never. Here we thought family helped each other out, but if you're going to be stingy—" Stingy. Now I was seeing red. Working for what you have isn't being stingy, Carol. It's called being responsible. Maybe you should try it sometime. Frank tried to smooth things over, but the damage was done. Look, Emma, no need to get upset. We're just talking here. Talking? Right. I couldn't hide my sarcasm. Seems like all we ever do is talk about how my family can solve your problems. That night, after they finally left, with Jake apologizing for his parents' misunderstanding, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a full-on invasion of our lives by two people who saw me not as a daughter-in-law, but as a walking, talking ATM. After our little Lily came into this world, life took a turn I didn't quite expect. You'd think the arrival of a grandchild would bring out the best in people, right? Well, not so much with Jake's folks. They showed up at the hospital with what had to be the cheapest onesie from the discount bin. It still had the clearance sticker on it. But when my folks came through with a beautiful hand-knit blanket and some top-notch baby gear, you'd have thought World War III was about to break out in that hospital room. Wow, really laying it on thick, aren't they? Carol quipped, eyeing the gifts with a mix of disdain and envy. Must be nice to just throw money around. Bet they could have just gotten you a house instead of all this fluff, Jake chimed in with a chuckle. Yeah, Mom's got a point, Em. Your folks sure don't hold back. A house might have been more practical, huh? My heart sank. Here I was holding our newborn, and all they could talk about was how my parents should have spent their money. It stung hearing Jake echo his mom's words. Was our daughter just a dollar sign to them? I tried to keep the peace, biting back my growing anger. Well, it's not about the price tag, right? It's the thought that counts. But Frank wasn't about to let it go. Oh, sure. But when you think about it, a nice little investment in property, now that's a gift that keeps on giving. The ride home from the hospital was tense. Jake tried to smooth things over, saying his parents were just old-fashioned and didn't mean anything by it. But the seed was planted. Doubt started creeping in about why Jake really married me. Was it love? Or was my family's bank account the main attraction? A few weeks later, during one of their unsolicited visits, Carol brought it up again. We were all crammed in our living room, Lily fussing in my arms, and Carol couldn't resist a jab at the new stroller my mom had bought us. Must be nice having your folks shower Lily with all these expensive toys and gadgets, though a contribution to a house fund would have been more useful, don't you think? She said, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive tone I'd come to dread. Jake, sitting beside his mom, nodded. Actually, babe, we've been talking. Maybe your parents could help us out with a down payment instead of more baby stuff. Makes sense, right? I was floored. Not only were Jake's parents relentless, but now Jake was on board with turning our daughter's birth into a bargaining chip for financial gain. It felt like I was living in some twisted reality where love and family meant less than material wealth. Is that what this is about for you, Jake? Using my parents for money? I couldn't hide the hurt in my voice. I thought we were in this together, for better or worse, not for richer or poorer. Jake looked taken aback, but Carol just sniffed. Well, when your wife's parents are rich, it's only practical to think about these things. After they finally left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Lily asleep beside me. The realization hit me hard. My marriage, my family, it all felt like a transaction to them, and I was the currency. The last few years have been a roller coaster, to say the least. Lily's grown into a fiery little 3-year-old, full of life and laughter, but life threw us some curveballs that I never saw coming. First, it was Mom. The accident was sudden, a shock to all of us. I was drowning in grief, barely keeping it together for Lily. But Jake, his first question wasn't about how I was holding up. No, it was, so, how much are you getting from your mom's will? It felt like a slap in the face. My mom wasn't even cold, and here he was, eyeing her legacy like a vulture. According to Mom's will, I inherited the barbershop chain. I knew nothing about running a business, but Jake was quick to offer his expertise. "Babe, let me handle this. You know I've got a knack for business," he said, all confidence and smiles. I was too lost in my grief to argue, so I let him take the reins, though I made sure the ownership papers stayed in my name. I thought maybe, just maybe, he could turn things around for us. Then, barely a year later, Dad passed away from a heart attack. Losing both my parents in such a short time broke something in me. I needed Jake more than ever, but all he could talk about was what we'd inherit from Dad. The day after Dad's death, Jake's parents came over. I expected maybe a shred of decency, a moment of respect for my loss. But no, they dove straight into speculations about Dad's wealth. "So, Emma, must be a hefty sum coming your way, huh?" Frank said, barely able to contain his glee. I saw red. "Can you not, for once, just stop talking about money?" I shouted, the words exploding out of me like shrapnel. Carol put on her best offended face. "Well, I never. We're just concerned about the family's future. No need to be rude." Jake tried to play peacemaker, as always. They're just curious. It's a big deal, you know." "A big deal?" I echoed, my voice rising. "My parents are gone, Jake, and all you and your parents can think about is cashing in? Is that all I am to you? A bank?" The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jake looked at me, then at his parents, and mumbled some half-hearted apology, but the damage was done. I couldn't stand the sight of them, their greed, their complete lack of empathy. "Get out," I said, my voice steady but cold. They left, Carol muttering under her breath, Frank with a scowl. Jake lingered, trying to justify his parents' behavior, but I was done listening. 2 days after my dad died, Jake comes bouncing through the doorway earlier than usual. "Babe, I've got awesome news," he beams at me, barely containing his excitement. "I've struck a deal to sell the hairdresser chain. Can you believe it?" My jaw nearly hit the floor. "What? You did what without even asking me?" I was fuming, feeling a mix of betrayal and disbelief. Before we could really dive into it, his folks showed up, ready to party like we'd hit the jackpot. They brought in this feast from some fancy restaurant and a bunch of boars that screamed high roller. Carol was all smiles, waving those boars in my face. "Guess what, honey? We've sold the old condo and put down a deposit on a beach house. We're all moving to the coast." I stared at her, feeling like I was trapped in some bad dream. "Hold on, you what? Nobody asked me about moving. I don't want to live by the beach with all that humidity and the winds. With a kid! Are you out of your mind?" Carol just waved off my concerns like I was talking about the weather. "Oh, don't you worry about that. We've also booked a cruise. You should come with us. It'll be fabulous." "Where's this money coming from?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "Well, darling, with your father's passing and the sale of the salons, money's no object now. We're set for life. Think about it. Yachts, private jets, we're living the dream." I turned to Jake, utterly dumbfounded. Why are we even talking about selling my mom's business again? And what's this nonsense about being set for life? "Babe, it makes sense. Managing both businesses will be too much. We've got to focus on what's more profitable. It's for our future, for our daughter's future." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The greed, the audacity. It was all too much. "Show me the financials for the salon," I demanded. "I want to see everything before we make any rash decisions." Jake squirmed, avoiding eye contact. "Look, it's all about our future, about making sure we're comfortable." His parents joined the chorus, pressing me to just let go and enjoy the windfall. But looking at them, all I could see were vultures circling. "Why the rush to sell the hairdresser shops again?" I pressed, needing answers from Jake. He shrugged, the picture of faux reason. "Look, babe, after your dad's gone, juggling both businesses just doesn't make sense. We've got to focus on what brings in more dough. The car oil thing is a gold mine compared to the salons." His folks perked up at this, chiming in with their 2 cents. "Darling, think about it. Selling those little shops could give you a life of luxury. Why waste your time on them?" His mom seated, her voice dripping with greed. The sight of them practically salivating over my inheritance made my skin crawl. "I want you to leave now," I said, my voice firm, my resolve stronger. "This is a time to mourn my father, not feast on what he left behind." Jake tried to interrupt, but I cut him off. "And another thing, this is my inheritance we're talking about. Mine. You and your parents have no say in this." The air turned icy as they realized I wasn't the pushover they thought I was. With heavy steps and heavier scowls, they left, leaving me to ponder the lonely battle ahead. The dawn after my father's funeral found me in a fog of grief. The world around me dulled to a monotonous gray. That's when Jake decided to inject his version of color back into our lives. Over a breakfast that tasted like cardboard, he launched into his agenda. "We need to call a meeting with the founders of your father's company pronto," Jake stated, his voice slicing through the quiet like a knife. I paused, a piece of toast halfway to my mouth, and stared at him. "Jake, my father has just been buried. Can't this wait? I need some time to process everything." He waved off my concerns with a flick of his hand. "Time is money, babe. We need to act fast." Frustrated and seeking clarity, I reached out to our family lawyer asking for a breakdown of the barbershop chain's status and a primer on my father's business dealings. Information I hoped would give me some ground to stand on. A month whizzed by in a blur of legal jargon and financial statements until Jake, accompanied by his parents, descended upon our house once more, each of them bursting with unsolicited advice and greed-laden suggestions. Without so much as a hello, Jake dove right in. "You know, Em, I've been thinking. I'm the right man to lead your dad's company." The audacity of his claim left me speechless, but he wasn't done. "And I'll need a new car, something that screams business mobile. The latest BMW should do the trick." Before I could even muster a response, Carol chimed in with her own outrageous demands. "The coastal house is nearly ready. We just need to throw in another $300,000, plus some for furniture. And dear, I expect you to set up an account for me. I need to maintain my lifestyle after all." After listening to their endless demands, I knew what I had to do. It was like a switch flipped inside me. More Mrs. my gal, clutching the divorce papers like a shield, I stepped forward, interrupting their chatter. "Jake, we need to talk," I announced, placing the papers before him on the coffee table. He picked them up, a frown creasing his forehead. "What's this?" "Divorce papers," I stated, every word deliberate. "I see, I've had the business audited, Jake. You've run it into the ground. It's teetering on the edge of ruin because of your management." His face drained of color, a guilty child caught in a lie. I was trying to make it better," he stammered, his excuses as flimsy as his confidence. "Make it better by firing our most talented staff and neglecting the core of what made the business succeed." My voice rose, fueled by a cocktail of anger and betrayal. Carol, ever the meddler, couldn't resist intervening. "Now, dear, let's remember, he's entitled to half of everything. Marriage binds assets, after all." I couldn't help but laugh, but there was no joy in it. "Nice try, but everything's been in my name since before I made the colossal mistake of marrying your son. He gets nothing from me." The room went silent. They were stunned, their grand schemes shattering around them. "And another thing," I added, staring Jake down, "you're going to pay back every penny you've cost the business. Every single penny." When the reality of the divorce finally hit Jake, his reaction was to desperately grovel, pleading with me to reconsider. "Please, can't we talk about this? There has to be another way," he begged, his voice cracking with desperation. His parents, not to be outdone in the drama department, launched into their own tearful performance. They lamented about sinking all their funds into the coastal house, a property now hanging by a thread without the next installment. "We're going to lose everything," his mother sobbed, her tears flowing freely. "Please, think of what this means for us." I listened, my heart hardened by their previous actions, feeling nothing but a detached coldness towards their plight. "Sorry, but that's your mess," I stated, my tone unwavering. With a newfound resolve, I guided them to the door, closing it and this chapter of my life behind them. In the days that followed, I didn't allow myself to dwell on the past. Instead, I focused on the future, selling the apartment that Jake and I once shared. The sale provided just enough for a quaint, welcoming house that promised a new beginning for my daughter and me. Stepping into our new home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, a sense of peace enveloping us in a way that had been missing for too long. Every corner filled with laughter, every nook cradling a memory we were making together. Out in the garden, Lily's laughter was a balm to my soul. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you," she'd say, her eyes alight with wonder and admiration. "You're going to be even more amazing," I'd respond, pulling her into a hug. I knew deep down that we were on the brink of something wonderful together. We were unstoppable, ready to meet whatever the future held with open arms and hopeful hearts.